Good morning. I am Kay, and this is Thought for the Day for 3rd December. I'm continuing the story of Jesus in Matthew's Gospel and following on from Bridget's wonderful explanation of the parable of the sower yesterday. Today, we have the parable of the weeds. These parables form part of a group of parables known as the parables of the kingdom, because Jesus used them to explain more about the kingdom of heaven. Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 to 30 and 34 to 43. The parable of the weeds. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burnt, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. "I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world." Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He answered, "The one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the people of the kingdom. The weeds are the people of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burnt in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears, let them hear." As for the parable of the sower, Jesus followed this parable with an explanation of what he meant. It is self-explanatory up to a point, but as always, it is worth further exploration. The first is the place of the parable in Jesus' teaching. A parable has been described as an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. It is a really useful way of remembering a truth, as we all tend to remember stories. Also, a parable is generally meant to deliver a single truth. It is not an allegory capable of dissecting in detail, where every possible detail has an inner meaning. It is meant to be listened to and its kernel of truth remembered. As Bridget explained so well yesterday, only some of those who heard the parables, those whose eyes and ears were open to Jesus' teaching, the spiritually sensitive, would actually have absorbed what he said, and this is just as true today. However, it is clear that Jesus felt the stories he told in his parables were so important that, at this point in his ministry, he apparently didn't say anything to the crowd without using a parable. So what key points was Jesus making here? And is this parable still relevant today? You might think that it would have been easy to distinguish the weeds from the corn long before the harvest time. However, there was a weed called darnel, which looked identical to corn until the ears of wheat actually appeared. Not only did it then look different, it was actually poisonous. So a wise farmer would wait until the final harvest to deal with the weeds, rather than try to get rid of them earlier, when some of the good wheat would also be uprooted and destroyed. In his explanation, Jesus makes it clear what the different figures in the parable represent. The field represents the world, and the good seed represents God's true people. The wheat comes into God's barn from all over the world, all different people and societies, and from all ages of the church. The weeds represent false believers sown in the world by the devil. They might superficially look like God's true people. They can talk the talk and appear to walk the walk, but they are impostors who sow discord and contempt and hurt the spiritual walks of the good seed. We all know sad stories of people or even whole churches who have been led terribly astray in this way. But ultimately, God will divide his true believers from false believers at the end of the age. And this parable teaches us very powerfully that while we always need to be discerning in our Christian walk, it is God's job to divide in judgment, because only he, no human being, can see what is really going on inside our hearts. Finally, in this parable, Jesus shows us very clearly the truth that there are two different paths that we can take, and they lead to two different eternal destinies at totally opposite ends of the spectrum. Eternal fire on the one hand, and eternal sunshine in God's kingdom on the other. I do find this a rather harsh picture, but I think we just need to trust that God has a plan for this world, and he is working it out in his perfect timing. Have a good day.